full hour as well, this session. At the very end, we have a link to an evaluation form, and tomorrow the webinar recording will be available on our DigiLearn Scot blog, and also a link to a copy of these slides as well. So don't worry too much about taking lots of notes tonight, because we're going to provide you with all the links and the slides as well. So we've got this webinar on tonight, and the purpose of this is to help you to identify and manage possible risks that are associated with online learning. As I said, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions and have discussions throughout. I've had a wee look at the sign up and can see that the majority of people here signed up are from secondary school, but it is relevant for early learning and childcare colleagues and primary colleagues as well, because we're going to cover safeguarding, as in safeguarding you, the practitioner, too. So it's relevant to absolutely everybody that has signed up tonight. Okay, so this slide's a wee bit about the what and the who. When we're planning learning, we're thinking, who are we planning it for and what are our intentions? Who is our audience and what is the purpose?
You got the slides no changed on my screen.
Okay.
It's still the production one.
Give it a wee second. Just let it catch up. So we should be seeing now an infographic with a circle that says planning in the middle.
That's us now,
yeah, got it now, great. What I'll do is I'll pop it on my other device as well so that I can see that, and if there is a wee lag, I'll know when to pause. Okay, so we're thinking about, first of all, our class rules. Is our class rules that we had previously for a face-to-face classroom environment, are they going to be the same, or are they going to need modified for working remotely? We're thinking about what tools we're using, because different types of tools, and their different uses then may pose different risks. So for example, if we're searching for information, or is it a tool that is enabling communication? Scott, do you want to come in here about the routine part?
Certainly. I was just thinking that if we're looking at this infographic here, we've got to take into consideration the groups of people we're going to be teaching, the activities we're going to do, and the class rules and routines they'll have within the class. As teachers, we all have acceptable standards of behaviour within our physical classroom, and we'll have strategies for dealing with these. Are these relevant when you're on a virtual classroom? And what you've got to think about is your session in Teams like this as a virtual classroom. So if you're setting up breakout rooms, they would be like your desks or your tables where people would go and work at, and how would you monitor that work? So what routines would you have to feed back into the main classroom discussion? Do your learners have the appropriate digital skills to be able to go from one breakout room back to the main channel? Again, that you're anticipating some of the issues that you may have while delivering remote learning and teaching. And again, different tools. If your learners have never used that tool, then I wouldn't be introducing lots of different tools, because that's just going to be a recipe for disaster. And looking at associated risks. As you're online, there are associated risks with being online and delivering remote learning and teaching. And again, the main risks that educators will face would be communication. So how do we communicate during this activity? Is there an opportunity for learners to go off and communicate with each other without being moderated? Again, because you would moderate the communication or the chat within your classroom as you're walking about your class, you'll be listening into some of the discussions groups are having to make sure they're on task. So how do you moderate that? How do you make sure they're on task? And the other associated risk with using remote learning teaching and being online is sharing of documents, information. So that could increase the risk of inappropriate resources being passed between each other, having links to a picture that's stored on OneDrive that you're not aware of. So these are different aspects that we've got to take into consideration. If kids are using personal devices, the risks when searching the internet is they're unfiltered. they have unfiltered access to the World Wide Web. Whereas if you're using a school device, you've got your local authority filtering software there to stop them looking at inappropriate sites, and that's a bit an example that we're going to come on to next and look at in more detail. But as a teacher, you've got to anticipate where the risk is going to be and make sure your pupils, learners, have the appropriate digital tools to take part in the learning activity, and you have a good understanding of the digital tools to recover if something does go wrong. There's any inappropriate chat, how to mute somebody, how to remove somebody for a lesson, and then again we'll look at this in more detail, how to go about reporting that, and how to deal with interruptions during if you're doing live lessons. So what happens if the postman comes to the door and your dog starts barking, or if you're doing remote learning and you've got homeschooling as well, one of your kids butts in, how to deal with that and build that resilience into it, so you're aware that if something does crop in, you know who you could go and pass on to. For example, we're talking about routines. If you're delivering a live lesson and then the door comes and one of your kids are out playing or fell and hurt themselves and you need to go and deal with that, have you got somebody that can then take over that live lesson and let you go and deal with that? So it's about you thinking about the risks and associated issues that might pop up and try to control that and have a controlled environment and strategies to deal with that. If you want to move on, Eva.
Great, thanks Scott. So let's have a wee look at one of those concrete examples just now. So some risks associated with searching here. Looking at the images, does anybody want to hazard a guess at what the learning intention might have been here, what the search criteria might have been, and what happened? And just pop it into the chat or pop your microphone on and give us a wild guess. Okay, anybody? Okay, and I'll explain what it is. So this happened at a school in a local authority that I was working in at the time, and it was a really simple a simple image mix up that came up from doing a search. The topic was Skara Brae. And of course, just due to a wee typo and a completely random search, images of bras came up. So it's just wee things like this when we're talking about thinking upstream, planning ahead, preparing for every eventuality. A little thing as simple as this could disrupt a whole lesson and really take you away from the learning that was intended. And what we need to bear in mind now as well is for our learners that we're engaging with at home, they may be working on devices that are unfiltered. They don't have the same level of protection as what your devices in school have. And any old image can come up that probably wouldn't in school. And a wee top tip from Scott here is narrowing down your search criteria, so to help your learners out and to save you a bit of time as well when you're searching for things. This search criteria here, site ... and then the name of the site and then what it is that you're looking for within that site. So maybe let you elaborate a bit on that, Scott.
Aye. This just allows you to have a wee bit more control over what websites are looking for. So instead of going to Google and just typing in 3 random words if we're creating a secure password, when you've got lots and lots of different hits, what we're wanting to look at is the National Cyber Security Guidelines around creating passwords, which states you must use 3 random words. So what the site, when you look at this in the search bar, you would just type the command site, and that would tell Google you've only to search this website for this phrase. So it would say that you would only search the National Cyber Security Centre website for the phrase 3 random words. You wouldn't do a full World Wide Web search, it would just be that website. Again, this is reducing the risk of any kids get any search results and looking for the most obscure one to try and put you off. And certainly with my experience when I was in secondary school, kids used to love that when you get at your stride and you weren't expecting something, or here's something that's unexpected for you, Mr. Hunter, you've not seen this before. Whereas this gives you that control back. Yeah, we understand they're using personal devices, they're not local authority managed, there's no filtering software on them, here's an example, here's the websites you must use and must search, and that reduces that chance of having images or something inappropriate popping up when they're doing that searching. And the last thing that you want as a teacher is a young kid sitting, or a pupil sitting searching their stuff, and they're starting looking at images of bras or people wearing bras, and then saying, "Oh, Mr. Hunter's told me to search this, and this is what to do." And then the parents are getting a bit outraged that you've got them searching up pictures like this that are inappropriate for a computing lesson. So that's how I would use it. And again, it's just about that forward planning, as Eva says, thinking upstream. What are the potential pitfalls in this? Where could the risks associated with this be? Because I know certainly if I was doing a lesson, the last thing I would want would be pictures of people wearing bras popping up. It would certainly then take the learning teaching away to people having a laugh or a joke and talking about the images that somebody's posted on the screen. And then you've got to think about how do you deal with that as a professional, getting them back on task. And if there's going to be any repercussions for the young person who posted that image within the chat facility. So again, you've got to start thinking about these things and how you would deal with that to send that clear message out to the other learners that this is not appropriate when you're using Teams or carrying out live lessons.
Great, thanks very much, Scott. So just moving on to one of our other activity examples. So in this instance, we were asking our learners to communicate together. So it might be, as a whole class, or it might be in small groups. So, what are some of the risks that are associated there with communication? So we're thinking first and foremost about inappropriate chat, aren't we? So, words and phrases and things popping up that are not appropriate, and perhaps in our classroom our golden rules might be about being kind to each other, and have we replicated this in our online classroom rules as well? So if you wouldn't say it to your face, we're not typing it either, sort of thing. And then we're thinking about the inappropriate comments that may then lead to bullying as well, so it may lead to cyberbullying, so that's something else that we've got to be aware of as well.
And also taking into consideration the platform that you're using to communicate. I know we're using Glow just now, and we're using Teams through Glow, and that gives me the added layer of protection because anything you put in the chat is kept for a period of time. So if somebody puts in anything inappropriate in the chat and we need to get that back for example, if somebody's made a complaint, we can see the chat and see how the chat was. You can go to your Glow Key contacts and ask for that chat to be retrieved. So using the platform Teams through Glow offers you as a teacher some layer of protection against a young person saying, "No, that wasn't me. I never put that in the chat." We can get back and retrieve the chat for you and allow you to see that. That gives you that sort of layer of protection that you might not get within other platforms that schools may decide to use for distributing work to learners. It might be a company based in America and you've got to go through them to try and get the chat logs, and they'll not give you the chat logs. Whereas your Glow Key contact at your local authority can get that for you by contacting the Glow team. And things like, "Oh, it wasn't me that done that." No, it says your name, but I wasn't logged on. The Glow team can actually tell you the location of the device. So the actual physical location of that device. So if it's in your address, then it was you. No, it was my older brother that done it. So you can narrow that down because we used a generic password. They could get my username and password and come on and disrupt a lesson. But initially they're saying it wasn't me, and we can then go and look at the chat log to say it's your username. I wasn't logged in. We can then get back and look at the data from RM and say, no, it came from your house. So it's certainly a problem within that location. And that gives you that added layer of protection as a teacher. When you're teaching, for example, if somebody makes an inappropriate comment, you can get the chat and you can ask them for the location of it, and then you can take it further. So if somebody's saying, "Oh, it wasn't me," having these discussions with young people that obviously might deny it. But that's where using the platform like Glow can offer you that other layer of protection in case something does go awry when you're doing your learning teaching, which you might not get in another platform, or it might take you ages to get the data from another platform. So that's something to be aware of as well when you're looking at communication and whatever platform you're looking at using. How long's the chat kept for? Can you get access to the chat? How easy is it? And then making your learners aware of that, and that cuts down on the inappropriate, so immature chatter as well. Because that was certainly when I was in school, one of the first things I told the kids: you can use the chat facility, but remember, we see that, and the Glow team see that. That's sitting in Glasgow or Denham House in Livingston. They can see that chat, so I can get a copy of that chat and I know what device it is sent by. So just letting them know that as you're going on to your online teaching, you're anticipating there might be an issue, but if it's common knowledge that we can get it, that reduces the chance of that as well. And then as you maybe make a report to your principal teacher, senior management, saying there's an appropriate chat happening on this learning and teaching activity. So how do you deal with that as a school? You know, and having that chat with them, what's the procedures? Because if you're in school, you maybe write a referral and pass it on to the guidance staff or the senior management staff. But what do you do if you're sitting in your kitchen or sitting in your office? How do you contact them and let them know this has happened? Do you have any questions so far? Or are you
chat looks clear so far, but please feel free to come in, anybody, if you do have any questions. But it's clear just now, Scott, and I think just what you're saying there about that level of protection that we have through Glow, that's really important to raise that and make the learners aware of it from the offset as well. We have, and we'll come back to this later, the Glow community rules, and everybody that uses Glow needs to be aware of these and in agreement of these. And I think it's really important to share with them that, you know, Glow is a safe and secure environment, and it'll continue to be because it's monitored. And like Scott says, you know, anything inappropriate that happens in the Glow environment can be traced right back to you, or you know, your home address through your IP addresses and things like that as well. And another wee point we were going to mention here, and we've got the links to it as well, for learners that are using smartphones, so that maybe using their mobile devices. There is an app from BBC Own It. Now, BBC Own It is an online resource to support young people to navigate their online life. And a couple of years ago, they launched an app as well for smartphones. And what this has is a built-in keyboard. So you know how you can toggle between your text keyboard and your emoji keyboard and various other keyboards now. There's also the BBC Own It keyboard. And if you've got that on, what it does is it filters what you're writing. And for example, there in that picture, it's popped up, somebody's typed in "you're ugly." This would give you a wee prompt to say, are you sure you want to write this? You know, are these kind words or something, you know, to that extent, that just, you know, gives them that wee reminder that what they're about to write may cause offence or upset or harm. And it's just a really useful one to know about. So what we've spoke about so far is, you know, these monitoring, chatting things in the Glow environment. But what to be aware of as well is sometimes, depending on what's posted, and it could be a link to a private platform, you know, a private chat somewhere else, and once that link's clicked on, your learners are then off into a private chat that you're not able to monitor. So it's really important that you're keeping an eye, you're constantly able to see the updates that come in from the learners, and if there's anything on there that you think, what's that? That's nothing to do with our learning and teaching, that's when you need to be questioning it and even perhaps reporting it through Glow. And we have a slide about that at the end and how you do that. But if at any time any of the concerns, you know, are of a child protection nature, you automatically go through your local authority child protection guidelines, policy procedures, and, you know, follow what you would normally do to report
and
that.
We'll certainly talk about that, the safeguarding aspect of it, child protection, in a wee bit as we move on. We start looking at this and looking at the considerations, the safeguarding considerations. But, you know, he was making a good point there. Some of the issues that we've got, the main risk to me would be around communication and how the young people are communicating. And if there is links going into your chat which takes them to another platform, how do you deal with that? You know, if you're live learning and teaching at that moment in time, kids are moving off to another, or copying and pasting a link into another, platform to continue that communication. you know, how do you deal with that as a teacher? You know, is it you spot the link and you see it, and then you can remove it from the chat? So again, having that quick sort of ability to look at a URL and understand where it goes. You know, every URL is unique. So the ability just to look at that, even as you're looking at extension like your .gov, your .org, if you're seeing things like .ru, which is Russia, you don't know that that's not something that you possibly want to be looking at a computing lesson and then removing that from the chat, but you need to make sure you can use the digital tools to enable you to do that. And how do you stop chat?
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Scott. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, how do we do just that? How are we able to monitor the activity? So there's a few different points here, but a few key points to sort of help us, because, you know, we're not seeing these learners face to face, you know, as we would if schools were all open as normal. So I think what's really important is not making assumptions about our learners. You know, they might learn a certain way in school and that might not be the same at home. We don't always know what the home environments are like and if they're equipped for learning. We don't always know about access to devices and how many siblings are sharing a device. We don't always know about connectivity as well. And there's a really helpful element built into Microsoft Teams that we're going to have a wee look at in a minute that can just help us gather some more information. So we're not able to see learners face to face, but we are able to use insights, and we've got a session coming up on this really soon as well. So I'm just going to go into Microsoft Teams and I'll give you a little quick demo of what Insights is and where you can find it. So this, of course,
if you're thinking about your indicators for safeguarding, there'll be the indicators that you have as a teacher when you physically see somebody coming into your classroom, you know, whether they're not eating, they're not their breakfast, you know, you get physical indicators there, which would maybe be an indicator for your professional judgment as a teacher with the years experience you have. You know, you're used to using your professional judgment. I think there's something not quite right there. Scott, I'm going to go and speak to a guidance teacher, but just how do you do that virtually? So how do you have the confidence in your professional judgment virtually when you might not see them? You know, so how do you look? What indicators do you look for to see there's something that might not be quite right with this young person that you can then go to, pass it on to your child protection lead or the guidance staff that you think there's something not quite right here with the young person while they're undertaking their learning and teaching?
Great. And one of the tools that we mentioned here in Teams can just help you gather a wee bit more information. It's just from the drop-down menu there on a class team. It's available in class teams. It's called Insights. Just let this load up. And it just gives you a wee bit more sort of observation information, or it might, you know, there might be some red flags. So for example, maybe the time that the pupil has signed on to submit an assignment, you know, it could be really late in the evening or through the night. That might be a bit of an indicator that there's something, you know, what's going on there, that this young person isn't asleep at this time. You know, is this the only time that they have to access a device? Or, you know, it would give you a bit more information that you could then start asking questions about.
Yeah, and that's as it just refreshes, either that's the thing you're looking at. You're looking for different indicators when it comes to safeguarding. So if you've got your insights and you get into your analytics, your teams and your assignments, and you see a young person's always completing an assignment at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's every Monday at 2 o'clock. So what's the reason behind that? There's something not quite right. And then if you link that back to your classroom routines, what are your routines? When are you telling them that they complete their tasks? You know, do you do your tasks between, you know, your live learning is between 9 and 10 in the morning, you can go and do your activities later on at your own leisure? Have you set a routine to young people and then saying, like, after 9 o'clock at night, I don't want you doing any activity? You're not contacting me after that time for support as well. And we'll talk about that when we start looking at the teacher safeguarding, how to protect teachers and protect yourself. But the analytical tool is really good to allow you to see patterns when kids are engaging in activity and what activities they're engaging most with as a teacher. And then you can, you know, get that feedback about your learning and teaching and say, right, this activity's not working. But activity 2, everybody's doing that. Activity 1, they're not doing. So we'll put things more along the activity 2 line. Whereas if you see somebody's logged on at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to complete the activity, no, there's something not quite right there. And just having this screen here, this useful tool, you can take a screen dump and pass on to your guidance staff or child protection staff and have a look at it. Now, the reason I mention this is that the Go team will also look at analytics as well, and part of my role is to support the Go team with some of the safeguarding issues. And we had an incident where a young person was logging on to one of the third-party apps on Go, at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was just they were waking up during the night and they were going to read a book, an audio book, to get back to sleep. But Go's also monitoring that as well in activity. Again, that gives you another layer of protection around the safeguarding which you might not get with a third-party app or a platform. So again, very useful tool for you to look at what learning activities are working well, and for safeguarding, why they engaging in this activity at that time. And that is a really useful tool, not just for safeguarding, but for you to look at who's engaging and who's not engaging.
It just gives you a bit of extra intel that you wouldn't get otherwise, because you're not always going to have learners saying to you, I done my assignment at 3 in the morning or whatever. So it gives you another bit of useful information there. So there's going to be another session on this coming up soon, though, so look out for that.
Look out for that, because that's a key element, I would say, if you're remote learning teaching, for teachers to see what's working well and what time they're engaging with. And then you can fit your learning teaching activities round about that. As Eva says, there might be other constraints in the house about when they get access to devices, but just having that is a key indicator to see when they're engaging, and having the routine set out. Please don't contact me after 8 o'clock at night. I don't expect you to be doing your homework after a certain amount of time. And if I see you doing that, a certain time of night, so if I see you doing your homework at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, again, it would depend on the age of stage of the learner, but I would also be concerned about that as well. If they've been sitting playing their Xbox and then they remember they've got to do their assignment for computing, and just having the ability to have that conversation with the learner, going, I know when you're doing the homework, I don't think you should be doing the homework at that time, or passing that on to the guidance staff within the school.
Thanks, Scott. So yeah, really, in terms of professional judgment, the indicators that we maybe would be looking out for in the class face-to-face is slightly different as well online. So it's about making the best use of the tools that we've got that can give us that extra information just to help us, pull all the pieces of the puzzle together. And then I think, Scott, you've already touched on this, on reporting it. What are your reporting procedures? Your child protection, your wellbeing concern form reporting procedures now that you're not always in school and some staff are working remotely. And then it's a bit about just, like we said at the beginning, the whole thinking upstream, the contingency planning. So, if you were faced with a sort of crisis situation in class, you maybe had a disclosure during circle time or, during whatever type of discussion time, what do you do? What do you do to ensure that the pupils are safe, and what do you do to diffuse the situation, to take those that are not directly involved in it away, and carrying on with another task. So, if that's something that happens online, you need to think about, what are we doing here? Are we ending the call? Do we have another member of staff available? Is there somebody else to take over the call while I spend some time with the learner that's involved? So it's always...
that's about setting when you're going to deliver your live learning teaching, or when you're going to be looking at the activity, because what if you're delivering a lesson at 5 o'clock at night just now, because that's when you get most engagement, and there's a disclosure or something happens you think it's a safeguarding aspect, do you know who you're going to contact? You get a contact, does your senior management know you're delivering at this time? Does your PT know you're delivering at this time? Because if it was a child protection issue or a safeguarding issue, if it wouldn't be a PT, you would have to try and contact the child protection lead for the school. Now, as a secondary teacher, everybody got their child protection training at the beginning of the year. You had to sign you had done it, and you're always told as soon as there's a disclosure, child protection issue, you go straight to the child protection lead. How do you do that virtually? Is there procedures put in place to allow you to do that virtually? Because when I was in my classroom, I could walk downstairs and say to another member of staff, could you watch your class and go and speak to the deputy, and go down and speak to them, or along to the guidance staff, and then come back to my class. How do I do that virtually? What the guidance teachers, homeschooling is not available at that time. Who do you want to contact? Have they got somebody on call? If you're, if you're delivering live lessons, they've always got a member of senior management on call at that time that you can contact. Is it through an email? If you don't get the email, or is it through use of mobile phones? Do you phone them and speak to them and come away for the live lesson at that time? These are things you've got to start thinking about.
And it's great to always have a backup member of staff there, if you can, because not everybody is going to be delivering live online all at the same time. And our colleague George, I'll pull it up just now, he shared a couple of examples of this on an earlier webinar, and it was just a sort of breakdown of what a digital day might look like in school, and I'll just pull it up to let you see it just now. But when the live teaching slots were happening, perhaps your stage partner wouldn't be doing that, or another colleague wouldn't be doing that at the same time, so that you always have that backup person. It's just like when if there's an emergency and you need to dash out the classroom for whatever reason, who comes to cover and be there for supervision.
And it's very much like your planner. Certainly when I was in school, I had a planner and it broke out period by period. And you had a rough idea of what you were teaching, and you knew who was off within the department at that time and where they would be in case there was anything. But that was done like unconsciously. Whereas we move virtually, if there is an incident, is there somebody that you can call at that moment in time, and how do you go about that to make sure they can come and take over your virtual lesson? As it's you're doing paired teaching there in as well, and they're just monitoring the chat, and then you can say I need to go, and then they take over, or they need to go and speak to a deputy. You need to start thinking about how you do it virtually, sitting in your own kitchen, sitting in your own office. How do I get in contact with the person I need to get in contact with? And do they know delivering a live lesson at this time? And this is where your planning is really important within the department. If I was back in school running my department, I would make sure I knew when people were live learning and teaching what obviously content they were doing, and make sure they know where to go, where they could find me. If they wanted help and bring them in, if there's any issues, I know I can contact them at that time, who's free at that moment in time. I think that's where you've got to be really careful with your planning in this, because the major risk that you have as teachers is that unintended consequence. I'm trying to do my best here, I'm trying to get them learning, so I'm going to do this, but unintended, I put myself or learners at risk without fully understanding the platform that I'm on. And that's what we watch out for, this unintended risk or consequence, because we're all trying to do our best, we're all trying to make sure learning teaching is happening, we're all trying to make sure we're getting an engaging lesson. But what's unintended consequences of searching using unfiltered software is you get pictures of bras up and you look for Scarra Bay, that's an unintended consequence. We're trying to do good, we're trying to get them learning independently, so we've got to try and anticipate these things rather than be reactive to these things.
Thanks, Scott. And I think just looking at the breakdown of a day here, and it's not all live online all the time. There's a good mixture here. Flipped learning, there's some live check-ins, and then there's some tasks that take you away from a device as well. And it's as much for the learners' well-being, it's about your well-being as well. If you were online or live lessons, all day, every day, I'm sure it would become really quite difficult. So just moving on now, takes us on nicely to the next slide here, talking about your safeguarding as well. So up until now we've really spoke about the safeguarding of young people online, but what about you as the practitioner as well? Okay, so we've got some different icons here on the screen, some of the things we've touched on already. So for a bit of protection, depending on what platform you're using, you may want to record live sessions if you don't have another member of staff that's able to join or be there as a backup. But Scott has spoke really clearly about being able to track back conversations and posts through Glow to give us that added level of protection.
you've got to understand that a learner, the platform, as a teacher, the platform you're going to use, or your local authority is using. If you've got that ability to record, is there any need to record the lesson if the no goes, get in the chat? Is there any need to, understanding the learners that are going to be there? Is there any need to deliver this content live, or to do a voiceover, a PowerPoint, and let them watch it and then set them an activity? Then I can have a tutorial, a check-in where they can drop in if any problems and you can explain it to them. Planning out the learning is very important. Everybody's trying to do the jump to the live learning and teaching. How do they do it live? I would say, well, you need to do it live. Let's have a look at what activity. And then, as I say, the other key thing as well is you just get the picture of the device there. What device you're using? Have your local authority issued you with a device, or are you using your own personal device? Because if you're using your own personal device and you don't have antivirus software on it, then kids are sending you emails with attachments that increases the risk of you getting a virus on your personal computer. So what happens if your personal computer goes down, it gets a virus, ransomware on it, and you can no longer use that device till you've got it fixed and you've got a backup device. So what happens in that circumstances? Again, good way to reduce the risk of this is use Glow, OneDrive. All documents uploaded to OneDrive are scanned for viruses. Any documents on OneDrive for a prolonged period of time are constantly scanned for viruses. So again, that reduces your risk. So rather than getting the young people to send you stuff directly, put it up onto OneDrive, send me the link. That reduces the risk of your machine getting a virus. Again, you can put antivirus software on your computer as well. Another top tip, make sure it's updated. All your software is up to date on your machine. But again, just know that everything's scanned as it's uploaded to OneDrive by the Glow team. Then we know that's another layer of security. It's reducing that risk of you getting a virus on the machine. And again, it reduces the communication, that one-to-one contact with people of a parent. And that's, we've got to look at that as well as educators. Because we're used to living our life online, if somebody sends you a request for help at 9 o'clock at night, as a teacher, or I'm going to try and help that young person out. At 9 o'clock at night, you should be taking some time for you yourself to relax, recharge your batteries, spend time with your family, and no answer that. So having clear routines saying after 9 o'clock at night, I'm not going to answer it. So what happens if you answer the pupil disagrees with you, then the parent jumps in on the keyboard and starts answering it because they've had a couple of glasses of wine and they're saying, look, you didn't answer my kid's contacting my kid at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, you shouldn't be doing computer work. You're leaving yourself open to a wee bit of that as well. So being wary about when you are contacting young people, whether it's directly, whether it's through the chat, through Teams, or whether it is through email, direct email contact as well. So you've got to think about how you deal with that, and if you did get a parent being abusive towards you on a Friday night because you've contacted your person about homework, what's the school's procedures to deal with that? Is it sort of unacceptable for the parent to do that? So what do you do? Do you block that email? Do you report it to your senior management to try and deal with it yourself? I'd probably say the worst thing you could do is try and deal with it yourself. It's probably better you let your PT or senior management know and deal with it at that point, and then they can contact the parent if it's inappropriate behaviour to contact Mr. Hinton directly. But understanding, having these clear routines that after this time I will not contact you about homework and I will not provide support, because you need to recharge your batteries as well. And again, that's an unintended consequence of trying to support your learners. Or they're doing their homework now, I'll help them. I've been there. When we first started using Teams back in my school, they would message you at 8:30, 9 o'clock, I don't understand this question, you say, help me. And your automatic reaction is to jump on, yes, I can. I ended up removing the Teams app from my personal devices, because I was spending a lot more time to do support learners for the homework. Because once the kids find out you're answering, I sent them a message last night as answering, I'm going to try that. It becomes a wee bit overwhelming, so I removed one of the strategies I had when I was in class was to remove the Teams app from my personal devices, so I wasn't constantly getting notifications.
Thanks, Scott. And then just thinking about your privacy as well, and your personal information. So, for example, this wee icon in the middle is of it's showing you it's a wee screen recording. So whatever you're screen sharing, whether you're sharing a PowerPoint or whether you're demoing something or going to BBC Bitesize or whatever it is you're using online, just bear in mind what information is open on your screen. So if you accidentally click on another tab, it may show all your emails. You might have a personal picture on your desktop background. There could be a whole variety of files or images or information there at the accidental click of the mouse, and then all your learners can see it. So it's always really good to turn off or close down like your email apps, or turn off notifications, anything that you've got popping up, just to keep that private.
And what I would also say is if you're going to do demonstrate web searching using Google, clear your cookies. Especially if you're using YouTube as well, clear your cookies so you're not getting wee pop-up ads coming up, and it could be for anything that you've been searching or talking about. You don't want the kids or learners knowing that you're doing that. One of the examples we had last week doing this was a lady kept putting up adverts for Clear Blue pregnancy tests, and she was on YouTube with her learners. So simple things like that you've got to anticipate, so clearing your cookies can help that as well, so that doesn't happen to you. Then you're giving that the learners that wee bit of personal information might pop up in 6 months' time, or a couple of weeks' time, where it could come back and get you. When you're delivering and teaching somebody, asks you a question, well, are you pregnant at this time? I know you were trying, and that can just enough to put you off because they've seen that ad. So I'll be wary of that. And if you're using your own personal device, something as simple as having 2 different browsers. Maybe use Chrome for learning and teaching, where you maybe use Firefox for your personal stuff, and as Eva says, turn off your notifications. You don't want somebody, if you're using your personal device and you're logged into Facebook, you've been checking it at your lunchtime, you've been having your lunch, you certainly don't want notifications popping up about your Facebook stuff when you're doing, or any other social media when you're doing a live lesson, or you're recording. I'm recording a part of a lesson that I'm going to put up, and then up in the browser at the top along the tab you can see Facebook, and something as simple as that gives the learners a wee bit of, Mr. Hunter uses Facebook, no, his username is, I'm going to go and try and snoop about his Facebook page, and then somebody saying, oh, I was on your Facebook when you're learning to, I've seen your partner on pictures of you and your partner when you're on Facebook. So things like that, if you're using a personal device, can be very destructive to learning and teaching. It's just these simple things you've got to consider as you go on and you're planning your learning.
Great, thanks for that, Scott. And then just moving on here, this is an opportunity if you want to share with us so far what is working well for you. So if there's any strategies at all, and it doesn't need to be in relation to safeguarding as well, just in general in relation to engaging with your learners online. Is there anything that you've discovered, or anything that you've tried, any strategies, or any particular routine, or class rules, or anything that you have found that's making a difference? Feel free to either pop it in the chat or just pop your microphones on and let us know. And if not, that's absolutely fine, and there'll be a wee chance at the end again once you've had a wee think about it, if you want to share anything with us at the end too. So we mentioned about how you can report concerns through Glow. So we're just going to give you a little demo of how you can do that and what that looks like now. Okay, so this is taking us to the Glow Connect page. So this is the supporting page for anything in relation to Glow. Don't need a Glow login to access this one. It's just an open website. So it's telling us about the report a concern function and how it works. So anything that you come across that's worrying, nasty or offensive, but again, anything that's in relation to child protection, you must follow your local authority child protection procedures. Okay, so let's have a wee look at the form that comes up.
It's also good if I would say if you're going to fill out one of these, I would make sure you've told your senior management team as well, because the Glow team will contact the head teacher or local authority as they get a report concerning, we'll say we've got a concern coming through your school, somebody's made us aware of this issue, and they'll contact the head teacher. So I would make sure you've spoke to the head teacher if you're going to use the report of concern, and let them know that you're using this, because you will contact them, or the local authority will contact.
Thanks, Scott, and I'll show you where on the Glow Launchpad you can access this feature as well. So it asks you what your concern is about, where about this concern has taken place, so where in the Glow environment. It gives you a box to type in a description of what that concern is, or even a link to the chat, or whatever it is that you have came across. You pop your name in, your email address and your phone number, and then that will be actioned by the Glow team. So if you are on, I'll just log in. When you're in the Glow Launchpad here, up here at the little question mark circle symbol, you've got a shortcut again to Glow Connect, but also directly to that Glow Report a Concern feature. So that's in there as well. So a really good one to share with all your staff. And then there's also the Glow Help Hub, where you might want to if there's anything that you need more help with as well, you can do a research in there as well. And I think I mentioned at the beginning the Glow community rules. Let me see, where is that again? There it is. So under security and privacy, there's a tab or a section for Glow community rules. This is a really good one to be sharing with all your learners and parents and carers as well, so that they are aware of what the standard is within the Glow environment in terms of security, safety and behaviour as well. So that would be something that I would be asking all my learners to agree with, if we're all going to be working together in the Glow environment.
If you aren't using Glow, as I said before, there is that model of support there. There's the layers where they've got antivirus software if you're using OneDrive and you're uploading to that. There is, for example, the chat will be kept. It doesn't matter if you're using Google Classroom Teams, the chat will be kept for a period of time. So I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head how long they keep the chat for. They also monitor the chat in the analytics to see if there's any inappropriate behaviour or logins at any time. So just make sure that you know that's there, and things like using obviously generic passwords for your learners, getting them to change the password once they log in, just having that setting in the management console, and that's another useful thing as well. When you're going to do your learning teaching, if you've spoke to whoever's in the school to make sure you can get access to change passwords, because kids will forget passwords, it will happen. So it's how do you get, if you're going to deliver a live lesson, you need them on Glow using some of the Office tools, and if you've got the Glow password, how do you reset it? Do you have to email somebody, and then it can take a day or two before they get the password reset? Use a teacher having the ability to change passwords was absolutely essential when I was in school, because there was always kids who forgot their passwords. Reset it, make sure they change it as soon as they log in.
And you might also have an issue with a member of staff that's been locked out of Glow, for whatever reason. They've maybe put in their password wrong a few times and they cannot get in, and they've got a meeting scheduled at 9:30 to engage with their learners. Who in your school is able to support them to do that? And if you're not sure who it is, you can find out if you go to your profile settings and then down to my profile. It's going to tell you what rights you have here. So I don't have any additional rights at all here, but when I was local authority based, I had password admin rights, and I was able to help reset passwords for the staff as well in the centre. So if you're not sure who it is, if everybody checks their account details, and then you'll see who has password admin rights, and you go to the management console, so the wee cog, and then it'll bring up all the people or all the students or all the learners that you have management password admin rights for. These are all just training accounts. We don't have access to any real learners, of course. And then the drop down actions button, change password, that will change the password for them, so that when they next time they log in, they're then prompted to create a new password. And we've popped in a couple of links just to help you to share information with them on how you can do that really securely. So through
I would say that by saying, so if you don't have access to it, make sure you know who in your department or somebody in your department does have access to it, because there's nothing worse. When I was in school, you could send them to whoever done it within the school, or can you go and see Mr. Hunter, he can change your password and get you into go. We can't do that now as we've been learning and teaching, so you need to have that ability to solve that problem, anticipate that being an issue, especially if you're getting S1 class, to change them. And then looking into that, because that was always when I was in school, the S1s constantly to get the password away, so you could change it, get them logged in, and it took 2 minutes, rather than getting them wonder about the school, looking for somebody and then coming back and saying, well, I couldn't find Mr. Hunter to change my password. Just having that wee bit of anticipation that passwords could be an issue, so let's make sure that I have the ability to change passwords.
Thanks very much. So all the links are either things that we've covered or things that you'll find useful. So there's various links there for password guidance. There's the Go Connect password guidance, and then there's the national advice as well from the National Cyber Security Centre, and then there's a nice video of an activity in creating passwords for younger learners using some post-its and dice just as a way to help them generate a random password there as well. And then in terms of keeping our devices secure that we've touched on earlier on, Cyber Aware and the National Parent Forum of Scotland have some really nice takeaway guides, and we're going to just touch on DigiLearn Scot blog just on the next slide. So this is where you can access the webinar recordings if you've never been there before already. We have a blog, digilearn.scot, and this is where you can find all the information about the upcoming webinars, but also through the webinar catch-up tab. You can access the videos of the webinar recordings, and then also the slides that accompanied that webinar with all the links and all the notes there that you can take away and download a copy of for your own professional development. Something that we're always looking for as well is some, sharing what's working well for you, like we mentioned a few slides back. And on the sharing practice tab, this is where practitioners have shared little short blogs. It's nothing too in depth at all, but telling us what's working well for them, or they've perhaps come along to a webinar and they've implemented one or two things from the webinar that's making a difference. So if at any point you feel like you would like to share something, please come back, visit this page on the blog, and you'll get the details of how to submit something, because it's real practitioner stories that help develop confidence in other practitioners, and then they can say, right, I'm going to give that a go as well. That worked for a real teacher, in the school down the road from me. I'm going to try that as well. And there's a whole lot more on the blog as well if you've got time to have a wee look. We also have a DigiLearn Scot Twitter page. It's an open page. You don't need to be a Twitter member, but if you want to keep up to date with the latest wee snippets of news from all over the country, have a wee search on Twitter for @DigiLearnScot, and you can see what's going on. So there'll be lots of information about the upcoming Cyber Week Scotland, Safer Internet Day, and things like that as well. And I forgot to put that slide in, Scott, for Safer Internet Day as well, so I'll add that in at the end of this, so you'll have some information about what the theme is this year for Safer Internet Day and how you can register. Then finally, if you do have the time, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could complete our evaluation for us. We're really working hard going through all our evaluation responses to plan our next series of webinars, and we want to make sure that they meet your needs. And in order for us to know what they are and to develop these sessions, we need you to tell us. So I'm just going to stop our recording there.